Ilhan Omar's son gets stopped by ICE, questioned, released. No charges, no incident, and she runs to the cameras screaming persecution. But here's what she doesn't want to talk about. Billions of dollars allegedly stolen from federal programs in her own state, her own district, on her watch. A scandal so massive that an internal memo reportedly told prosecutors to back off because politicians feared losing votes. Now she's calling the questions creepy and disturbing. You know what's actually disturbing? The double standard. Now, this is not a small-time scam. We're talking about billions in Medicaid fraud, food aid theft, federal programs designed to help people in need, allegedly looted while Minnesota's leaders looked the other way. And Governor Tim Walz is doing what he does best, blaming Donald Trump for a scandal that happened in his state under his leadership with his party in total control. But the real heat is on Ilhan Omar. She's out there on television complaining her son was briefly questioned by immigration officers. He showed his papers, he was released, end of story. But she framed it as oppression. Meanwhile, the ever-colorful Senator John Kennedy confirmed an internal Minnesota Attorney General memo allegedly showing that enforcement against the fraud was deliberately slowed because politicians feared backlash from Somali voters. Equal justice abandoned for political survival. That's the real scandal that Omar does not want you to see. And some breaking news on the weight loss front. While politicians like Ilhan Omar deflect and billions disappear from federal programs, Americans are losing faith that anyone in power is looking out for them. But you can still look out for yourself. That is why I trust BioTrust GLP-1 Elevate from trimwithgary.com. While corrupt officials get fat on your tax dollars, this natural formula helps trigger hunger-controlling signals without peptides, without needles, prescriptions, or dangerous side effects. It promotes fullness, reduces cravings, and supports real fat loss over muscle loss. Right now, get 40% off at trimwithgary.com plus a 60-day guarantee and free shipping. Every order that BioTrust donates a meal to hungry children through NoKidHungry.org. Over 5 million meals have been donated so far. Take back control at trimwithgary.com. So it gets worse. A UN investigation found the exact same fraud pattern with Somali-linked organizations in Sweden. 70% of food aid stolen, ghost beneficiaries on the rolls, fake NGOs created to siphon funds. $100 million gone. Now people are asking, is this the same playbook that was running in Minnesota? Omar calls that question racist. She said we should be monitoring and profiling white men instead. And that's the actual quote. So when scrutiny hits her community, it's persecution. When she calls for profiling others, it's policy. One set of rules for Ilhan Omar, another set for the rest of America. And the media lets her get away with it every single time. Here it is. Here's Tim Walz blaming President Trump for the Minnesota Somali fraud scandal that happened on his watch. Listen.
Blame Trump, play. They are still forgetting.
We're now investigating Minnesota's massive Somali fraud scandal.
This is not brand new, and it's been being worked on.
This clown is blaming Trump for a massive scandal.
This is out of the words of a true beta. At the end of the day, if you're going to blame President Trump for everything, even the ills of your own state and the mismanagement of those medical funds, let's be honest here, this is your fault. And this is Ilhan Omar's fault. This is the federal government. It's also the state government failing Minnesota. And he sat there and really admitted it. And the idea that you're going to bring Trump in this, and President Trump has been the president for about 10 months now, is pretty ridiculous. This has been going on far before President Trump even got into office. This is their only playbook. They are still on the blame Trump playbook. And what they are still forgetting is that just 1 year ago, we won the House, we won the Senate, he won the presidency overwhelmingly, and they are still reeling as to how they're going to move forward. Right. Again, this ship is rudderless. They have no leadership, and the only thing that they could do is blame Trump, even for their ills and for their own missteps.
We're now investigating.
Yeah. Billions are stolen, blame Trump. Here's Ilhan Omar saying it's disturbing and creepy that Trump is highlighting the fraud.
And it is really disturbing and creepy to have the President of the United States be obsessed with you and those who share your ethnicity. I know that he is deflecting from the failures of his presidency. He'd rather scapegoat us. It is really disturbing.
He'd rather scapegoat us. No, how about he'd rather have you all arrested for billions in theft? Here's where Ilhan Omar says that we should be monitoring white men.
Fear, they say. A lot of conservatives in particular would say that the rise in Islamophobia is a result not of hate, but of fear, a legitimate fear, they say, of quote-unquote jihadist terrorism, whether it's Fort Hood or San Bernardino or the recent truck attack in New York. What do you say to them?
I would say our country should be more fearful of white men across our country, because they are actually causing most of the deaths within this country. And so if fear was the driving force of policies to keep America safe, Americans safe inside of this country, we should be profiling, monitoring, and creating policies to fight the radicalization of white men.
A lot of
and the irony here is I believe she's actually married to a white man. That was after the marriage to her brother. The Senate Democrats, Tim Burchett writes, blocked our bill to stop funding the Taliban with your money. Tim Burchett dropped a bomb. Senate Democrats blocked a bill that would have cut off U.S. funding to the Taliban and corrupt NGOs funneling money to terrorist hands. According to Burchett, the U.S. is indirectly sending up to $40 million per week to Taliban-controlled Afghanistan with zero accountability. That money straight into the pockets of the same people we spent 20 years and 2,000 American lives fighting. Elon told him the U.S. had dumped close to $1 trillion into those bottomless pits of corruption. So why block a bill to stop it? Good question. Ask your senator where their loyalties are. Let's listen to this moment from Tim Burchett. Looks like he's in his car doing an interview with Fox.
Completely out of control. With a phone call, and I had a phone call with Secretary Rubio meeting with him. This deal with the Somalis over in Minnesota is just the tip of the iceberg, ma'am. It is, it's completely out of control. We are sending currently $40 million a week to the Taliban in Afghanistan. There's around 1,000 of these NGOs that are created, and what happens is some billionaire Soros-esque kind of person puts money in an account, $1 million, some unelected bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. sees that, and it's got a great name like, Feed the Starving Children or something. So, and they start funding them. Elon Musk told me, and I have no reason to doubt it, we probably put close to $1 trillion of your tax dollars into these things. And then it flows into the pockets of terrorists, and ma'am, they will hate us for free. We don't need to be paying the Taliban $40 million a week. But the president's aware of it. And last week, the Senate Democrats blocked the bill on the Senate floor, if you can imagine that. And you got to wonder where their loyalties are. They don't care if they burn this dadgum country down. All they want is to get the money to fund, because their wives and or their girlfriends, or possibly both, are probably employed by some of these NGOs. We better start watching this. If we're sending $40 million a week to the Taliban, dadgum, and the Somalis are ripping us off over there, it's all over the country. We better start paying attention.
Yeah, it is a tip of the iceberg. When you think about what they just uncovered in Minnesota, where else is it happening? How widespread is it? How are the methods being employed in Minnesota being replicated in other parts of the nation? Bill Mitchell writes, this is criminal blackmail. Tim Walz, forced by Somali insiders, including Ilhan Omar, to steal billions from Minnesota taxpayers just to hold on to Democrats' power. Walz was blackmailed by a group of politically connected Somali criminals, including Ilhan Omar, to embezzle approximately $1 billion in public funds, the total potential reaching $8 billion, making it the single largest blackmail operation in United States history. Straight theft from hard-working Americans. And here's a clip he attached with Jesse Waters. Let's check in with this.
The Somali scammers. We've known Tim Walz for less than a week, and we've already found out he let rioters burn down cities, lied about his military service, crushed small businesses, and turned Minnesota into a child sex change sanctuary. But that's not it. Tonight, we're dropping another Walz bombshell. As governor, Walz let a gang of politically connected Somali fraudsters steal $250 million of your money. It was the single biggest COVID scam in American history. During the pandemic, the government was just giving out money left and right. A nonprofit in Minnesota, Feeding Our Future, got $250 million to send food to needy kids. Sounds good, right? Here's the problem. Almost none of it was used for food. The Somali scammers blew our cash on real estate, cars, extravagant get trips. We have wire transfers that show thousands going to car dealerships. $160,000 went to some company in China. And $500,000 was sent to Kenya to buy an apartment. A $500,000 apartment in Kenya is probably a palace. But our tax dollars weren't just used on goodies. The politicians got a taste too. Ilhan Omar got thousands of dollars in donations from some of the scammers. These guys weren't criminal masterminds. It was sloppy. When they cooked the books, they made up names of their fake clients. They came up with these names. Are you ready? Unique problem. Friday donations. How'd nobody catch that? Well, early on, Walz's administration thought it looked a little suspicious, so they froze the funds. Then the Somalis sued and called Walz racist, so he kept letting them steal. They didn't bother to crack into the bank accounts or issue subpoenas. Walz just put his hands in the air and said, I'm not racist. Take whatever you want. Minnesota has a huge Somali population. You can't get called racist and expect to win another election there. Walz even gave one of the fraudsters the Minnesota Outstanding Refugee Award. 3 years later, she was indicted. No thanks to Walz, the feds came in after he ignored the problem for years. During the trial, the Somalis tracked down a juror and dropped off a Hallmark bag on their doorstep, filled with 120 G's, and a little note saying there's more to come if she acquits. This all happened under Walz's nose. He had every chance to stop it and failed. Just like he failed to protect his city during the riots, and just like he failed his unit when he retired before deployment. This is the guy Kamala Harris chose as her number 2.
Unbelievable. The house of cards is collapsing. It's only a matter of time before this really. Right now, we're talking about it. We know there's investigations, deep investigations. Stephen Miller told us this last week, and what we're looking at is what's happening on the surface, but the investigations are happening behind the scenes. So you know that Ilhan and Tim Walz are sweating right now because the walls are closing in. The walls, get it?
You know, calling him.
Yes.
Here's Ilhan complaining about her son getting stopped.
And, typically my son goes to Friday prayers with his friends, and then they all go and eat at their favorite restaurant in Cedar Riverside. And I knew, I saw videos earlier in the day from Representative Mahmoud Noor and others that the ICE agents were in Cedar. And so I kept calling to see,
Calling him,
yes,
your
calling
son.
my son to see if he was okay, if he had any run-ins with him. And he wasn't answering. And eventually that night I did get a chance to talk to him, and I had to remind him just how worried I am, because all of these areas that they're talking about are areas where he could possibly find himself in. And they are racially profiling. They are looking for young men who look Somali that they think are undocumented. My son was born here, so was the young man that they harassed. And he did say, they did come into the masjid while he was there praying. They didn't do anything.
They came into the mosque.
Yes, and they left. And then, yes, he did see them at the restaurant. They just walked around and kind of left. But yesterday, after he made a stop at a Target, he did get pulled over by ICE agents, and once he was able to produce his passport ID, they did let him go.
So your son went to Target last night with his passport.
Mm-hmm. He always carries it with him.
In case he gets pulled over.
Yes.
Which he did by ICE.
Yes.
So playing the victim, but no mention of the massive amounts of fraud. Here is Senator Kennedy confirming the internal Minnesota AG memo.
feeding our futures, went to the state and said, if you stop giving us this money, we're going to call you racist and we're going to sue you. And you don't want to be in the news. Now, here's what, and you say, well, why didn't the employees do something? They did. They told the people higher up, the people with the flags in their office. And you know what they did? Nothing. You know why? Well, here's what the legislative auditor in Minnesota said. He said that the threat of litigation and the negative press affected how the state politicians use their regulatory power. And here's what a fraud investigator in the Attorney General's office said. She said, there is a perception that, I'm quoting now, that forcefully tackling this issue would cause political backlash from the Somali community, which is a core voting bloc for Democrats. Feeding our futures, went to the state.
There's the memo in black and white. Protecting them all. The exact fraud happening by Somali immigrants in America also occurred by Somali immigrants in Sweden. Check this out.
An American story. Hey America, while you're debating whether Ilhan Omar married her brother for citizenship and watching every question about fraud deflected as hate or racism framing, this isn't just an American story. Did you know the same thing happened in Sweden? Somali-born MPs and community leaders there were caught in schemes siphoning over 100 million from schools, welfare and public programs. In Minnesota, prosecutors say 250 million meant to feed hungry American children was stolen, the largest welfare fraud in US history. Same pattern, same community networks, same playbook, and everyone insists these are isolated incidents. So how do two countries 4,000 miles apart end up with nearly identical fraud networks led by people from the exact same place? To understand that, you have to understand Somalia. You see, Somalia hasn't had a functioning government since 1991. What filled the void? Clans, militias, warlords, and aid cartels. Aid theft isn't on the margins, it is the system. A UN investigation found diversion in all 55 displacement camps surveyed. Multiple reports documented up to 70% of food aid stolen or diverted. Investigations from 2010 to 23 repeatedly showed aid convoys hijacked, taxed, or resold, ghost beneficiaries, fake NGOs created to siphon funds. Money doesn't flow through ministries, it flows through clans. Loyalty networks are greater than governance, and clan leaders control distribution lists, ghost beneficiaries, and paperwork. Add the Hawala system. Brilliant for diaspora remittances, but perfect for untraceable money flows. Billions move outside Western oversight. This is Somalia's operating system. Survival economics built on exploitation, ghost paperwork, intimidation, and aid theft. Now drop that system into Western welfare states built on trust, self-reporting, and paperwork, and it scales. Diaspora networks recreated familiar structures. Minnesota wasn't ready for clan-based accounting. Sweden wasn't built to track Hawala-style flows, and social workers weren't trained to audit war economy fraud. Minnesota's scandal wasn't a mistake, it was a blueprint. Sweden's wasn't random. Same methods, different country, bigger budgets. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Minnesota looks identical to old UN scandals in Somalia. Ghost children, ghost beneficiaries, fake signatures, fake invoices, fake food, real money. Only difference? In Somalia, the money came from aid. In Minnesota and Sweden, it comes from taxpayers. When a survival economy built on aid theft enters welfare systems, fraud isn't accidental, it's predictable.
Yeah, it's predictable. Ilhan Omar says ICE allegedly pulled over her son and released him after showing proof of citizenship. Let's see. Ilhan Omar says the highly credible accusation she married her brother is a national embarrassment.
And everybody knows I came to the United States at the age of 12, gained my citizenship at the age of 17, and I am an elected representative in the House of Congress, and so the House of Representatives in Congress. And so for me, you know, I look at it as a display of his ignorance, and I see it as a national embarrassment that he continues to say those kind of things, even though he does know what the truth is. Everybody knows.
We all know what the truth is. Rapid Response writes, Ilhan Omar says the highly credible accusations that she married her brother, which she's never disproved, are a national embarrassment. She's right, just not in the way she thinks.
I look at.
So here's the question nobody in the mainstream media will ask. If $1 billion was stolen from federal programs in any other community, would enforcement be slow to protect politicians? Would the accused get to play victim on cable news? Would questions about the fraud be called creepy and disturbing? You know the answer. Ilhan Omar knows the answer. And that's exactly why she's working overtime to change the subject. But the facts are out, the memo exists, and the American people are watching. You see, Ilhan Omar wants you to believe she's the victim here. Her son was questioned by ICE for a few minutes and released. That's her crisis. Meanwhile, billions allegedly vanished from programs meant to feed the hungry and care for the sick. An internal memo reportedly told prosecutors to stand down because Democrats feared losing votes. And when anyone asks about it, Omar calls it creepy. She calls it disturbing. She says Trump is deflecting. No, ma'am, you're deflecting. The fraud happened in Minnesota under Democrat leadership in districts you represent. The American people deserve answers, not accusations. They deserve accountability, not victimhood performances. The story isn't going away no matter how loud she screams. So here's my question for the comments. Do you think that Ilhan Omar should be immediately deported for her role in this scandal? Yes or no? Sound off in the comments, and you can support independent journalism by grabbing some gear from our merch shop. You'll find it linked in the description.